Hey y'all, and welcome to PolitiBrawl. My name is Brian, and Brandon Gill takes a wrecking ball to Dan Goldman's entire argument, embarrassing him in front of the entire Congress. Let's dive in.
This is the accusations and allegations from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, that the search of Mar-a-Lago for classified documents after Donald Trump repeatedly and persistently obstructed justice, obstructed an investigation, held on to classified documents, lied about it, told his lawyer to lie about it, that all of a sudden that search warrant is unprecedented and must be lawfare and politically motivated. Mr. Terwilliger, I'm sure you'll agree with me that the only job that the Department of Justice has is to follow the facts, evidence, and the law. Is that right?
I would agree with that, but I'd also tell
okay, so
I would also
I
say,
cut off,
sir, that
Terwilliger, I didn't ask you another
US
question.
attorneys have a duty
the other
to follow
problem
their
we
orders.
have here is the U.S. Attorney in Washington, D.C. And unfortunately, I don't have enough time to get into him, but to actually say that I am the president's lawyer, I hope you recognize, Mr. Terwilliger, as someone who cares about the Department of Justice, that undermines the entire law enforcement system more than anything that anyone else prior to January of this year has ever done. And I yield back.
I would now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gill, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lawfare is antithetical to the American experiment. It's explicitly contrary to the rule of law, but yet it seems to have been the Democrats' last-ditch effort to win the 2024 election cycle. In the lead-up to the 2024 election, Democrats knew that they couldn't fairly win. They were running a candidate whose cognitive state was in question, that was declining before our very eyes on national TV while they were trying to tell us that he was sharper than ever. Their political strategy reminds me of the line in Orwell's 1984, which was, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears." It was their final, most essential command. And that was consistent with the left's messaging. They were trying to tell the American people, for instance, that defunding the police makes our communities safer, that men can get pregnant and should be sharing locker rooms with our daughters, and that flooding our country with millions of cheap serf laborers would be somehow economically beneficial to our working class. But in order to get over this messaging issue, they attempted to, again, flood the country with people that they thought would eventually become Democrat voters, knowing even now that our election system had legitimate vulnerabilities to it. They directed social media companies to censor lawful speech of American citizens and illegally put President Trump behind bars for made-up federal charges. But I want to talk about one instance in particular, which was Democrats calling upon corrupt state-level officials to peruse state-level lawfare and punish President Trump and the millions of Americans who supported his campaign. Their one last hope leading up to the election was to concoct a novel legal theory by Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. Alvin Bragg in the state of New York didn't have jurisdiction to hear this case. They knew that moving forward would violate settled Supreme Court doctrine, but again, this was their last best hope. The state of New York, with Democrat donor Judge Juan Merchan overseeing the case, finally got their wish. They landed a conviction of the president. But the American people knew it was a sham, and now they know the lengths to which the other side of the aisle will go to attack their political opposition. What motive do you think, or would you ascribe to Bragg to move forward with such a clearly baseless case?
You know, I can't speculate on what his motives were, but I think enough is spoken by how the American people recently determined who should be the president of the United States. And I think that there is a general view in the public mood of the American public that looking to prosecute political enemies raises serious concerns about not just the law, but what culture do we want in America.
And that right there is the reason number 2, in my opinion, why Donald Trump won back in the election of 2024. And then there's something even crazier going on. I've said on this channel multiple times, the Democrat Party has been obsessed with the idea of recapturing the sort of the meta-narrative of being the party of law and order. They have been obsessed with this since they lost that back in the 1960s. Okay, they lost the idea of being a party of law and order and have not recovered. It has been over 60 years, and they have been trying their best to say that, oh, Democrats deep down are the party of law and order. I mean, just look at Donald Trump, and he had classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, classified documents that, as it turns out, he likely had the complete and total right to actually keep on his premises. The same way that Joe Biden kept classified documents back when he was vice president during the Obama years. Mike Pence had the exact same thing. The reason why the Mar-a-Lago raid happened was because an activist wing of the FBI pressured Merrick Garland, and then finally Joe Biden, or at least whoever was pulling the strings in the Biden administration, ultimately said, yes, you got the green light, you may go to Mar-a-Lago. And that's why the Democrats have been sort of waving this bloody shirt of all things that, oh, Donald Trump has flaunted the laws. Then you heard about Alvin Bragg and Judge Merchan and the 34 felonies, which most Americans just kind of look back and go, okay, so what were his felony accounts again? And no one, when they ask this question, can give them a right answer. And even if they could articulate, most people are just going to tilt their heads and go, that doesn't sound like a crime. Because they weren't really crimes at all. The original district attorney that had the case refused to move forward with it because it was so flimsy and could have gotten them in even more legal trouble down the road. But Alvin Bragg ran on the issue of I'll get Trump. Hey y'all, here's the deal. Gold loves President Trump. Under Trump's first term, the price of gold soared 53%. And the price of silver jumped 51%. Since the start of the second term, gold has skyrocketed even higher, breaking records and even outperforming stocks. Here's what I like about precious metals like gold and silver. They have been used as a store of value for centuries. Governments can't easily manipulate it. They are used as hedges against market risk and, of course, against inflation. That's why I partnered with the amazing people over at Goldco. Goldco is an award-winning precious metals company. They are fans of this show, and they have helped millions of Americans just like y'all to purchase over $3 billion in gold and silver. Right now, you can get a free copy of their 2025 gold and silver kit. On top of that, you might also qualify for their amazing unlimited silver bonus offer. So don't wait on this. Go to PolitiBrawlGold.com to learn more. That's PolitiBrawlGold.com or call 855-644-GOLD. You know, there were 3 opportunities to use lawfare against President Trump. The Alvin Bragg case was one of them. Letitia James tried, and now she's in hot water because it turns out she might actually live in Tennessee, not in New York City. Not in New York at all. And then there was the Fani Willis case, where they could have gotten Donald Trump on RICO. And as it turns out, she was sleeping with the very person she appointed as prosecutor, and so the whole case got thrown out. That was actually the one I think they had the horse bet on, and they got blindsided because Fani Willis was sleeping with the prosecutor. Man, Atlanta politics will never change. Man, that was a almost hilarious mess. Until you realize that, wait a minute, an entire wing of the Democrat Party went after one dude with more vitriol and just ridiculous amounts of hatred than they ever bother looking in their own mirror and going, Joe, you might need to sit out the next election. And by then it was almost too late. But there's something even odder going on in this whole video, and it's not the attempt by Dan Goldman to lay out the Mar-a-Lago case or talk about the Alvin Bragg case, which he failed miserably. Again, Brandon Gill he understands rhetoric, he understands argument, and he just sent him packing to the floor. But the interesting part were these witnesses were not happy with Dan Goldman. They were not happy with the lawfare. They were not happy with answering those questions because they thought in their minds that this was all ridiculous. Because deep down, the American people do not like it when litigation is being used against political opponents. We don't like that. That feels wrong. There's something deep in the American spirit and the American psyche that we just don't like it when the law is being used incorrectly. You know, I've got it covered up because I want to keep up Original Sin as long as I'm reading it. One of my favorite books and favorite movies is To Kill a Mockingbird. The whole premise of the story is not just the whole idea of a couple of young kids coming of age in southern Alabama. The whole point of the book is about a story where a lawyer, a man from the Deep South, defends a black man because he felt he was wrongly accused. And he just didn't feel it, he proved it in court. And the reason that this story sticks out so much is because justice was not properly done, even though the evidence said otherwise. Americans don't like that. Some of the most important movies in American history are legal dramas, The Caine Mutiny, A Few Good Men. We have this in our system, we have this in our bones, because the very founding of this country had a huge emphasis on the idea of what is actually legal. That's why we fought a revolutionary war to begin with, ladies and gentlemen. We didn't fight against the king, no. We fought against a parliament that refused to treat us as citizens of an empire, instead as mere colonials who do not deserve representation. That is something that is just antithetically American. It's anti-American at its core. And the Democrats thought it would be a good idea to target Donald Trump on these charges, and it backfired. We like the idea of truth. We like the idea of legality. We like the idea that our political opponents, no matter how crazy they are, can run for office. It's why I actually don't want guys like Mandami barred from running. I don't want him denaturalized. I want people to have the opportunity to vote for him, even though it's a vote for their own doom, for lack of a better phrase. That is the cool part of our republic system. That is what democracy actually means. And the Democrats tried to trample it time and time again this past decade. And I think the American people have finally stood up and said, we've had enough. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. My name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on PolitiBrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.